Do you love it?
Hi, Nicole.
Hey. I was doing my throat clearing
Oh,
exercise before every
like you were a
episode,
singer. Yes.
but now I have on my podcast voice. Very calming, isn't
That's not for a podcast, actually. That's
it?
like
That's
that's a different kind of call that you're on.
ah, well, this episode is about chasing happiness. So,
It is.
however you can find it, baby.
Yep. In my 20s, I think that's probably what happiness looked like.
You did a lot of
Anyways,
sex calls?
no, no, but you
You
know.
know you know what's really
Anyways, let's
funny?
let's get right to it. What is funny?
Well, what's funny is I actually Googled chasing happiness
Yes.
just to do a little prep, and why not throw the whole
Yeah.
name of our podcast in there? And you know what came up? A Jonas Brothers movie trailer called Chasing Happiness. And then
Really?
I was like, the Jonas Brothers? What? I kind of think I know their music, but like, aren't they kids? Well, then I
They're
watched the
grown.
trailer and it was like really good. And I was like, I've been
Yeah.
a Jonas Brothers fan. I think knowing that the Jonas Brothers are out there is going to bring me happiness.
Have
They
you seen
came
one of the
back
Jonas
together.
Brothers in what's that movie with The Rock? Jumanji?
Oh,
Yeah,
which,
he's the one of them's very cute in there.
wait, one
Is
of
it
them is
Nick?
in it or are they all in it?
Yeah, he's in it. I think he's yeah, they're grown.
They're,
And I think we're old because we probably did not realize that there was a song by the Jonas Brothers called Chasing Happiness.
oh, is
So
that actually the name of one of their songs?
I don't know. I thought that's what you said.
Well, it's like a movie trailer they did on the
Oh,
Jonas Brothers. Like they did a
oh,
whole movie about them. And the whole thing was they had all this fame and fortune, but they weren't happy. And so
really?
one of them, Joe, maybe like the young one, maybe I don't know, the guy who
Yeah.
got married to that amazing actress from Slumdog Millionaire. Anyway,
Yes.
he was like, "Hey, brothers, I think we have to break up the band." And then the brother, he was like, I thought they were all going to hate me and never talk to me again. And maybe they did for a while. I don't know because I haven't
Yeah.
watched the actual movie. But then they like got back together later and their relationships got stronger. So, anyway, this is very
Really?
relevant because I mean, one of the big things is that we believe in our lives that when we achieve fame and fortune, when we conquer, that beast, we're going to be happier.
Right.
But it doesn't always work that way,
Doesn't
does it?
always work that way. No. And I just now understanding that there's a Jonas Brothers documentary called Chasing Happiness. I just want to be clear to all of our listeners. This is not a podcast episode about Jonas Brothers. This is
Well, it has
actually an
been.
episode about
It has been to this point, but we are now going to divert to other topics.
well, so I love this, Nicole, because this is a perfect lead in because if the Jonas Brothers, as they were chasing happiness, and they're super cute, they have brothers that they all love each other, they're talented, they have fame and fortune, but they were not happy. It's, if that's what the rest of us are chasing, I think that's partly why I wanted to do this episode because so much of what we all do as women are trying to find happiness. But we called it chasing happiness, not because of the Jonas Brothers, but because we're always chasing it, right? And can you actually catch it? So I think today we're talking a little bit about what does it mean to be happy? What does it feel like to be happy? How do you become happy? And then we'll talk about the Jonas Brothers.
Some more, yeah, why not?
Or maybe not.
We'll plug their documentary again, which neither of us have watched. Well, let
No.
me ask you, are you happy right now?
I maybe content. I think I'm content.
What's the
Yeah, but in general, yes. I'm happier now than maybe I have been in the past.
okay. And what's the difference between happiness and contentment?
That's a super deep question that I'm not sure. Happiness feels like, you know, it's funny because I was looking at, because I knew we were going to do this episode, I saw this magazine by Time that was, it was called Joy. And it talked about, I didn't buy it because it was like $15. And I thought, I'm not going to spend $15 for a Time magazine. But it probably had a lot of good insights. But it made me think, what's the difference between happiness and joyful, right? So do we associate being happy with those moments of joy? So as you asked me, what's the difference between content? I feel content. I feel good right now, like, but I'm not necessarily, full of joy and jumping around, which is what maybe I would think happiness is.
Well, and maybe we could back up a step too and be think about the difference between feelings and like baseline emotions, right? So like your baseline, are you generally like a happy person or a positive
Yeah.
person or whatever? And then but we have feelings, and those feelings can be excitement, they can be
Yes.
joy, you can have happiness as a feeling. And so
Right.
those feelings come and go, and they
Yes.
can also be enhanced by things like drugs and
Right.
drinking and sex and,
Yeah.
other things that can trigger sort of that dopamine
Yeah. Those were
booster.
all the keys to happiness, right? That you just listed out. Drug, sex, rock and roll.
Drugs, drinking, sex, maybe some rock and roll. Um, but yeah, so those feelings come and go, and it's healthy to have them on a daily basis. All kinds of feelings. We all have a spectrum of
Right?
feelings. We all like the ones that make us feel good better, right?
Yes.
But it's that baseline that I'm really interested in exploring. Don't you?
Yes, that's well, as you're talking about that, I think about like if you have just your body in general, right? Like you live in your body, and when you're ill or you have an injury, like right now, I'm having some back pain and I can feel it, right? So when it's not in pain, I don't even notice it. I don't notice my calf muscle right now. I don't notice my toes. I notice the parts that maybe are hurting. Um, but to your point, that that baseline is like when you kind of go through life or go through your day doing what you do, but not necessarily being super high or low. So when you ask, am I happy right now? I feel I feel fine, right? Like a general,
Mhm.
not discomfort, but also not like,
You're not elated.
no, exactly.
And that's probably a really good baseline for most people. And
Yeah.
I think to understand or to try to get to this concept of chasing happiness or, trying to achieve that feeling in our bodies and minds, it might be also important to talk about the other side. What does it feel like on the other side? What does it feel like when you are chronically unhappy? And have you been there
Right.
before? So I'm asking
Yes.
you. Yes, Sarah. We're going to dissect your
Yes.
psyche.
Yes. So I um I probably am more prone to depression in general. It's better now that I live in Florida and there's sunlight all the time. But it's sort of something that runs in my family. So I have battled with depression a majority of my life and have had to kind of come up with different strategies and techniques to ensure that I have a nice baseline. And if there are ups and downs, that I can kind of balance those out. But there's, I think, this notion that you need to be below the baseline to be able to feel happiness as well, right? So you have to have the contrast of the two.
Do you think that's true?
Actually, I do. I don't like it. I don't like the idea of it, but I think it's true. What do you think it's true?
Yeah, I think yeah, I do. I mean, I think it's this is interesting. I have one example that I'm not sure how many other women can relate to, but I feel like there are things in life that we use to sort of numb ourselves or give ourselves to even out the baseline.
Mhm.
And sometimes you do it knowingly, and sometimes it's sort of unknowingly. And
Yes.
I believe this is really interesting to me, but I believe that when I was on the pill for like 10 years of my life or more before I
Mhm.
switched birth control, it evened out my emotions. And I felt happy, but I didn't experience the things like anger, or I didn't
Right.
have that, like I didn't get those feelings well up in those feelings did not well up inside me very often. And so on the flip side, I wonder if I did not experience as strong of happy, high feelings as well.
Yeah.
And, you never know. I mean, I was also using alcohol at that time, so maybe I was trying to experience some of those feelings that I wasn't experiencing. Do even not I'm not blaming birth control, but
Yeah.
I just noticed that it evened me out a little. It was probably similar to like a antidepressant, which is really interesting, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yes. Yes, which and it makes you think about some of the chemicals within our body and how much um they can maybe dictate some of what we what we feel. And it's I laugh when I think about this, but when I was in college, I was on an antidepressant. And this woman in the paper, of course, I was like, I don't know, 22-year-old college student. And I had ended up, I was taking antidepressant because I was so deeply unhappy and like in this sort of weird black pit of despair that I could not get out of. And she wrote this editorial about how, everyone's drugged up and they're on antidepressants and no one can feel anything. And what being on an antidepressant allowed me to do was to actually feel both the highs and the lows because I often would tend so much towards the lows. I couldn't experience a normal range of emotions because I had a chemical imbalance within my body. Um, so it just, and I wrote this editorial, or it wasn't, I just wrote a letter to her like, hey, just so you know, we're not all crazy drugged up people. I just wanted her to understand my experience. It's so funny now when I think about how passionate I was about that. But, there was sort of the stigma of having a medication of some kind, but it was something that it helped me get better, you know, um, at the time. So,
Did she write you
anyways,
back?
no, no, you
God,
probably thought it was
wimp.
ridiculous.
What a
I
wimp.
know.
Um,
But but knowing so one thing I want to know though is, and I feel like we all do this, is and again why we called it chasing happiness is because it feels like happiness is something to be achieved if we just weigh the right amount, if my nose looked different, if I had a little more time, if right, like then sort of this happiness would be achieved and we'd be like, oh, all day long and just I mean, do you feel that way? I know I feel that way.
well, I think I used to feel that way. And
Mhm.
I think years and experience have shown me that it's not all necessarily about happiness. It's a deeper emotion or feeling that maybe we're going for. I have a interesting example from when Tim and I were racing and he was at the top of his game. And it was 2001. It was the Hawaii Ironman. We were both in the race that year. And he had been third and then second. And in 2001, right after 9/11, like, we didn't even know if the
Mhm.
race was gonna happen. But he was definitely one of the contenders, and I was just kind of really strong top 10 kind of contender.
Mhm.
So, we're out there in the race, we do the race. Tim wins the race by 15 minutes, like the
Wow.
longest, widest gap you've seen in history. And he was just on fire. And everyone was chanting USA the whole way because the whole world was
Yeah.
supporting us after 9/11. And I'm racing out there, right? I end up coming in 12th place. I was literally in the race, like, why am I even like trying to finish? My husband just won the freaking thing. Somebody was like, "Your husband just won 100 grand," because that's how much the prize
Yeah.
purse was, and I
Oh,
was
wow.
like, "I should drop out," but anyway, I continued. So, what happens is that when you win the race, you have to be ushered into drug testing. So, Tim
Mhm.
couldn't be at the finish for me. He was up at the drug testing,
Yeah.
and when I crossed the line, they were calling me in like, "The wife of Tim DeBoom who just won. Good job, Nicole," whatever. And I finish, and these people, they kind of surround you and wrap you in a towel, and they said,
Uh-huh.
"Your husband won. How do you feel?" And I said, "I'm so happy." I didn't even say I'm so happy. I just said, "Maybe he'll finally be happy now." That's what I said.
Oh, wow.
And what's really interesting is that he wasn't. He was happy
Right.
about the race. He won. The next year, he won
Yeah.
again, but he was almost less happy after winning 2 years in a row because now he had to win a third than
Wow.
he was when I met him at age 24 years old. Like, winning that race should have brought him everything he ever wanted, and he
Mhm.
wasn't fulfilled, he wasn't completed, he wasn't happy, and by proxy, I wasn't happy. Because
Right.
all I wanted was for him to be happy,
Be happy.
right?
That is like, that's the whole story in a nutshell right there. I mean, it's so powerful though. I mean, and that
Yes.
it's not like that was an accidental goal that he was achieving. You literally have to train. You're eating, strategically, you're training strategically. That's your job. It's what you do. And if, you attain the ultimate success and you're still not happy, like what does happiness
So maybe,
look like?
maybe being content is a better thing to aim for. What we
Mhm.
talked about at the very beginning, you're content.
Right?
Happiness can be a feeling that comes and goes, but if you can
Yeah.
create a baseline of contentment, a lot of people say being content is dangerous. It means you've lost your drive. I'm
Well, I would not
content.
say that.
I don't
No,
need to do
that's not what.
anything. But it's not
No.
like that. That's not what we're talking about here. Like, "Oh, I'm content. I could just sort of roll
Yeah.
the rest
It's
of my."
more like the absence of pain. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not in any kind of emotional pain or, um, questioning myself or doubting, like, that there's the absence of that. But I think, what almost it feels like happiness is is the pursuit of joy. Like, and I didn't really understand it until I saw that magazine cover, and I was like, "Oh, like when I ride a roller coaster, I feel joy. When I accidentally am playing with my kids and just 100% in the moment, I feel joy. I used to feel joy on the rugby field. I used to, when you're out with your friends, that used to happen before 20, before March of 2020. Just those like spontaneous moments of joy where you lose yourself. Um, those I think are precious, but you can't bottle that. You can't. Joy is like a thing to be experienced, I think, but it's like we all sort of are pursuing that. So as I was thinking about this, because I knew we'd have to share kind of how we felt about happy and like what makes us happy. I thought a lot about, I think I'm happiest in pursuit of a goal, right? So there's something to look forward to, and I'm working towards it. I'm working, but when I actually achieve it, I'm happy that I've achieved it. This is kind of relates to Tim's story too. I've achieved it, but then I'm like, okay, well, what's next? Like I love the thrill of possibility. That makes me very happy. And you shared in a previous episode, um, I think it was about goal setting and setting a mantra, the four keys to longevity, right? Or happiness. So maybe you could share those again.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So there is some research done on these blue zones in the world, which are places where people live the longest. And there's happiness blue zones too, but they overlap a little bit because you aren't going to live super long lives if you're miserable and dark and toxic. So we're just going to kind of fold it into one.
I
But
mean, my grandfather did, just so we're clear. We always
maybe.
wondered he's so angry and unhappy. How did he live so long?
Oh my gosh.
Anyways,
I mean, I'm talking 105, 107, like
really? That's
crazy
how old
old.
these people. Oh,
Oh yeah,
wow.
yeah. There's some really
Wow.
cool research going on. But you know what they say you need is four things. You need something to do. So for a lot of us it's a job or parenting or something to do, right? That fills our day. Someone to love, that's really important. Some
Yes.
way to give back or contribute, right?
Right.
And something to look forward to. And when you're missing one, it's important to try to rediscover it, right? Because
Yes.
these things are going to flow, ebb and flow in our lives and have different priorities. But yeah, so something to look forward to. So I get why the pursuit of the goal, the pursuit of the prize brings you joy. It probably fires you up. It brings you excitement.
Right.
It's definitely probably combines a few of those different things too, because you're contributing, it gives you something
Yes.
to do. And in your line of work, there's a lot of people to love.
Yes. Well, and if we, I mean, it almost seems like those are the keys to happiness in some way, right? Like if we were going to define happiness, it's, and if you were to relate it back to the Jonas Brothers, which the Jonas Brothers are not even in our notes. I don't
It just happened. It just came up. Just
But
happened.
so, they got famous and they achieved their goal. And then, but then there was this expectation for them to be great. And I mean, you have struggled with this too. You have said, well, I've sold, I won an Ironman. I mean, you did a lot of stuff before then too. But then you revolutionized the world of women's athletic apparel, with skirt sports. And then you were like done with that chapter. And I remember, I don't know if you texted it to me, but you were like, so does the next chapter of my life have to be epic for me to be happy? Or can it just be like normal? And
Can I tell
I,
you what you said?
what did I say?
I wrote it down. It was such a great quote. You said, you don't have to be doing something epic to be epic. You said,
That's true.
Nicole, you're
Said
epic.
that. Well,
And
I do believe
and
that.
it gave me strength, made me feel good. And I
You
think you're
are.
right. Part of this concept of the pursuit is that we set these lofty ambitions. And when we don't achieve them, or when we do achieve them, we're let down
Mhm.
on both sides. I can
Right.
guarantee that everyone listening who has achieved a big goal has crossed a marathon finish line or their first 5K finish line. They feel
Yes.
some kind of incredible high, like it's truly like a drug. But then there is the slide down the other side. There is the bell
Yes.
curve where you then say, well, what's next? And then you might feel despondent for a while because it's even hard to describe why.
Exactly. You know, it's when I was at Run Disney, so the marathon was, you know, in January was this very big thing, and we planned for it all year. And we, you know, we had the other events. We had Princess Half and Disneyland Half. You know, they were big events, but like marathon was like the mother. It was, by the time I left, we had extended it to 4 days of races, and you know, another like 4 to 5 days of an expo. There were VIP events all around it, right? So we would plan all year for this, and then it gets closer and it gets closer, and you're getting excited and everyone's talking. We're also very like, you know, running around and making sure that everything's being done, and and you would hit the weekend, and it was, I mean, it was full on adrenaline. You know, you're up at 1 o'clock every morning and making sure everything's where it's supposed to be, and everyone's running the races, and you're cheering at the finish line, and it's amazing, and you're crying because it's emotional, and then it's over. And I would literally plan for like post race depression. You know, I'll be like, oh, I don't know what to do today, and I'm so tired, and I'm, you know, and so similar to being an athlete that's running it, it's interesting as we're talking about this, how much, you know, there is an ebb and a flow, right? And that happiness, I don't think is, it's not something you ever, you literally can't achieve it and stay there forever.
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I'm really tired of telling my daughter when these wonderful, famous rock stars and artists and actors pass away that they died from, like, how'd they die? Drug overdose. Like, almost everyone. Like, we
Right.
told her about Elvis recently. We were like, "Well, unhealthy lifestyle," you name it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's you can think that getting to that point is going to bring you
Right.
that ultimate happiness, but it's not sustainable unless you find
Yes.
it within. Unless you
Yes.
find it within on an everyday basis, and it may be phrased like that boring word content or contentment,
Right.
but that might be the ultimate place to try to get. And if that's the ultimate place, then Sarah, you are rocking right now. And I
Oh,
am too, because I'm feeling it. I discovered this Danish word. It's spelled Hygge. You've probably seen it
uh-huh.
before. It's pronounced hygge. And
Uh-huh.
it's kind of their word for happiness, but it's not. It's physical and emotional. It's creating
Huh.
that sort of like cozy feeling inside and outside your body, all.
Wow.
Isn't that cool? That cozy
It
feeling. It's like
is.
that warm, happy
It's a
blanket.
warm hug. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
love it.
that's what I want. I want to walk around with a warm hug all the time. So
Yeah,
I'm
you
I'm
kind of
also
have to in Colorado. Like you have to. Parka.
Well, I do think, you and I have both discovered various things in our life that have helped us just kind of they're actionable things you can do when
Hmm.
you feel like you're in danger of sinking into a hole of despair that can help bring you happiness or gain happiness or keep the balance going. Do you
Yes.
roll into these things?
I'm gonna let you kick us
I'm kicking it.
off. Is this no, I'm gonna let you kick us off.
I
Yeah,
like
you're
kicking it.
kicking it.
I'll kick it. Okay, cool. Well, the absolute number one thing, and this is funny because every time Tim hears about like somebody being depressed or having an issue, and the first thing their doctors do, and I agree there's stigma around this, but the first thing the doctors do before they recommend this one very simple thing is they say, let's get you on antidepressants. Well, in addition to that, or even before that, get out and exercise. There's two parts to that. Get outside. That is proven to help raise spirits, and
Yes.
exercise. Move your body. Those things will help you. What do you think?
I think that is 100% correct. And I don't think it has to be it doesn't have to be vigorous, crazy exercise. You don't have to run a 10K, or it's just being outside. And I have, I learned from my mentor and friend, Jeff Galloway. He would tell me that even just walking for 15 minutes gets the juju going in your brain and blood flow, and it allows you to be more creative. You feel better. So I often, as I was starting out in my business, I would be like so overwhelmed, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to follow Jeff's advice, and I went outside and I walked for 15 minutes, and I could come back and I could, be present, be what I wanted to be. So I think that's huge. Exercise, going outside. Um, Gratitude, I think, is also key. And it hits on what you shared as well, is giving back. What was the of the four keys of
Mhm.
longevity? One was
Yeah.
giving back or
Yep.
contributing.
Contributing. Yeah.
So before I went into sport management, I was in social work, and I worked for the University of Kansas, doing research on a program, and we worked with people who had severe mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar, like severe mental illness that had been going on for often a lot of times, or derailed them. So they were part of the system. They didn't necessarily work. They hadn't been educated, or some had been educated, but were no longer, working at the time. And so we taught them how to be mentors to their peers. So if someone had just been diagnosed with a mental illness, had entered the system, we trained them to be a peer guide for these new people, right? To help them navigate the system and things like that. And then we also help them go back to school and get their college education, because mental illness often sets in at college age. So it disrupts kind of your life pattern. Um, and so my job, I was the research assistant and managed all the research, is we would administer surveys for hope and self-esteem. So before they entered the program, they would take the hope and self-esteem, and then they would take it again afterwards, and then they would do that again. So longitudinally, we tracked them for 2 years. So the fascinating thing is that, and really these people were kind of sitting at home. They were getting money from the government to live, and they were really unhappy. But as we taught them to give back and to have hope, these people begin to recover from their mental illness and become like contributing to society, simply because they were giving back in some way. So, I think the idea of gratitude and feeling like, if you're struggling with where you are, giving back to your community in some way, helping other people, being grateful, and just even sitting there for a minute to acknowledge what are the good things that you have, um, can really, I think, add to your overall contentment and your happiness. So that's a long, story for that that one, but
I love it.
relevant.
I love
Yeah.
it. And on the maybe actionable side, a lot of people keep gratitude journals. I've never kept a gratitude
Yes.
journal, but I sometimes will write down the things that, I am grateful for. And I
Yeah.
do think that is a practice that once you start it can really help you. So let me know how that
Yes.
turns out. Maybe I should start it.
I've never
Um,
been good with those either. I try. I will think in my own head, just when I struggle, or I'm just not feeling, I don't know, happy. I will often say, okay, I'm thankful for, even just our body and the absence of sickness. Because you really, I have friends who are very ill, and even at young ages, right? So just that idea of having a healthy body is something I think to be grateful and kind of just recentering where you are. So if you don't want to do a gratitude journal, just in your own brain, what are the three things that you're feeling grateful for today? And how can you give back to others?
Yeah. Yes. I like that.
Yeah.
I want to share one more. And people can Google this. There's lists of things that you can look at these lists of 50 things that can help you gain happiness or get you out of the dumps, right? There's one trick that I have employed for years. I've employed it during workouts, during races, and then during my everyday life. And it makes more difference in just about anything you can do, and everyone can do it. And that is smiling. You will
Oh,
find me
hold
running
on. I
down a
want to
trail.
know how many people just smiled. Did
Oh
you
my
just
God.
smile when she
Everyone
said that?
smile,
Because
smile.
I did. I
You
did. And then
did.
I felt happier.
It's
It
true.
worked.
It is
You're
true.
right.
Smiling, there's just some awesome research on smiling, but you can fake smile and it will have the same effect in your body. It will release the endorphins
Right.
that are going to make you happier. And the other really cool thing is just what happened with you, just saying the word or seeing someone do it. It's contagious. So if you're sitting there or standing there
Yes.
talking to someone and you are smiling the biggest smile, it is ridiculously hard for that person to not smile back at some point and be like with frown face. And you're like talking in a because what happens too is that your voice even changes, like your energy
It
changes.
does.
And even when you're faking a smile, it eventually turns real. It really does if you stick with it. um you will see me floating down mountain trails, smiling away. And people, I've often looked up and been like, God, that person's really smiling at me. And then I realized I've been smiling.
You're
And
smiling.
you don't see a lot of people out there just in their natural state with that great upturned, those upturned lips and
Yep.
that little sparkle that ends up coming with it. So I'm going to say smile your way to happiness.
Yes. And if that doesn't work, coffee can help and nachos or tacos.
You
Coffee,
know what?
nachos, and tacos. Yeah.
I'm gonna kind of wrap my point today by saying that I have thought a lot about happiness too, especially at
Mhm.
this time in my life and this life change. And one of the things that I have realized is that for me, happiness is about the little things. I enjoy my coffee in the morning and the afternoon.
Mhm.
I enjoy the little routines that I have with my daughter. I
Mhm.
enjoy getting outside and moving my body. It's the little things for me that make a big difference. I don't need the big thing.
Yes.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to go buy the expensive $5,000 toy, but I will spend 3 or $4 a day on my coffee and it adds up to the same amount. But it's the little things that make me happy. And so when
Yes.
people show me those little things, that makes me even happier. It expands, and as we know, it's contagious, so bring it on.
Yes. Yes. You know what I love about coffee in the morning is possibility. There's something about every morning getting up and knowing about the possibility of that day, right? Like rarely does the day kind of meet, of course, my to-do list or whatever, but it's like one point in the morning, especially if you get up before everyone else is awake and it's just kind of you and you have that coffee and you're like, it feels like a warm hug inside and out. And it's like, what could happen today? And that you get to have that and create that. I love that as well about the mornings. Um, so
Can I jump in here
yeah.
and say that I actually think our next episode should be about coffee? What do you think? Can we do
Okay.
it?
I would be okay with that. Yeah. Yes. I do love
Okay,
coffee.
coffee it is. Coffee is possibility.
Could it be like coffee and bacon? Because that's another one of my top.
That can be yours. And then for the vegan crowd, the
Oh,
boring,
you're
sober
vegan.
vegans out there, I will come up with our version of bacon,
Oh,
which might be
no bacon.
avocados.
Oh
Might be
man.
avocados. I get
Yeah,
avocados
avocados are
then.
good.
You can have bacon. I'll take avocados.
That just feels like I don't know. It feels wrong.
It's
I feel
wrong. So wrong.
maybe
Uh,
we could have a debate about that sometime. So so we like to close these out with my takeaways. And so I would like during this takeaway, honestly, my mind is a little bit blown by what you have shared with Nicole on the longevity piece of people being happy. And I have to write all four of these points down. We're gonna close out, so it's not actually the last. It's not our three takeaways, it's our four takeaways, because I honestly think what you said, to me, it's the recipe for happiness. You said it's someone to love, right?
mm-hmm.
Someone to love, something to do,
Mm-hmm.
something to look forward to,
Yes.
and then what was the other one?
Some way to give back or contribute to the greater good.
Yeah. So I challenge all of our listeners to think about those 4 points: someone to love, something to do, something to look forward to, and some way to give back. How does that apply to you? And how does that fit in with your happiness? Um, and and I love it because they can change over time. There's a not, it's not winning the Ironman. It's not, making $10 million. Those are not, achieving those goals don't bring happiness. But all of those points as you work towards them can really be the keys to happiness. So I challenge you to take a look at how that fits into your life. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
And
And
if you decide to break up the band, just know that someday you can come back together and it'll all be
you're
good.
right. You're absolutely right. Oh my
Go
God.
Jonas Brothers. All right. Another episode
So,
in the books. Thanks for listening to
yes.
episode 4.
And if you liked this, even if you didn't, you can subscribe.
Please
Subscribe to our
subscribe,
channel. Please do. Share. Give us a review if you like this
but
as well.
only if you like it for the review.
Only if you like it. We are very sensitive, so if you say anything, I will probably cry. Nicole maybe
That
has a
would definitely not help us find happiness. Um, yes, and we will see you next week for a really stimulating chat about coffee, maybe bacon and avocados.
All right. We'll see you later.
Over and out.